The upcoming election for county commissioner will likely be the most important in Grant County's history. Grant County has suffered a great deal of economic hardship over the last few decades, and much is at stake today. Because the 2018 election is so critical to Grant County's future, it's important to know the truth about the candidates running for county commissioner. This presentation will expose some disturbing truths about Grant County Commissioner candidate Gordon Larson. In this presentation, you learn that Gordon falsified an application to receive over $340,000 in public funding for an irrigation project on his property. Along with that, you'll see evidence that the Grant Soil and Water Conservation District not only aided Larson in doing this, but also withheld information from a public records request. The purpose of this presentation, once again, is to reveal the truth about someone who could potentially be representing the citizens of Grant County after the 2018 election. I hope you'll take this into consideration in determining your vote. First, here's the public records request made by Grant County resident Jim Sproul on March 24th, 2018. What you see is a request for documentation regarding the Larson Irrigation Consolidation Project, which was signed into agreement September 29th, 2016. Because Gordon applied for and received public funding for his irrigation project, information regarding his project is subject to public records requests. In this letter, Jim specifies the information he's looking for. Next, you'll see a response to this request by the Grant Soil and Water Conservation District Manager. It indicates that the request was received by GSWCD. This was dated March 27th, 2018. And keep this date in mind because it will come into play a little later. Next, you have the cooperative agreement, which was provided in the information sent to Jim Sproul by GSWCD in accordance with his public records request. I'm going to briefly show each page of this agreement. If you'd like to read any of the pages, please pause the video and restart it when you're finished reading. Now I'm going to show you page 3. Note at the top of the page it states that the cooperator will. Gordon Larson is the cooperator in this case. And also note the circled paragraph about halfway down, and let me enlarge this for you. And while this may sound like a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo, what it means is that Gordon must receive a permit from the Oregon Water Resources Department. He'll need this permit in order to be able to actually use the irrigation system he's planning on installing. And this paragraph is circled because Gordon didn't have this permit. He hadn't even applied for it. But yet, he signed this agreement on page 6, stating that he had. So you might say that Gordon lied. And the reason we know that Gordon lied is because also included in the public records documentation was an application for the very permit Gordon stated he had in the cooperative agreement he signed. And it's the only application for this permit. And it's dated July 13th, 2017, 10 months after he signed the cooperative agreement. Not only did Gordon not have the permit, but he still doesn't have it today. And because of that, he can't legally operate the irrigation system that over $340,000 of public funding paid for. But the plot thickens. I'll refer you again to the cooperative agreement Gordon signed. I'm going to flip through the pages quickly, and I want you to watch for the number 2018-0669 in handwriting at the top right of each page in the agreement. And you see it at the top of each page. This number is the document number it was given when it was filed into the county's records. It was filed there by GSWCD. On what day? March 28th, 2018. A day after Jim Sproul's public records request was acknowledged by GSWCD. So, These documents were filed into the county's records a day after the public records request was acknowledged. And why? Well, it may help to know that something else was filed there, along with everything else. A security agreement was filed there, too. And you'll see the same numbers you saw on the cooperative agreement at the top right of each page in the security agreement. The security agreement was entered into the county records along with all the other documentation regarding the Larson Irrigation Consolidation Project. And what day was the security agreement signed and made active? March 28, 2018, a day after the public records request was acknowledged, and the same day that all of the information regarding the Larson Irrigation Consolidation Project was filed into county records. And I'd like to refer you back to the cooperative agreement, but this time to page 2, where it says, the district will. And the district is, in this case, the Grant Soil and Water Conservation District. And one of the things you'll see on this page that GSWCD was required to do was establish a security agreement. They were required to establish this agreement before signing the cooperative agreement. Yet here, on page 6, we see the signature of the district manager with the date of September 29th, 2016. But the security agreement wasn't established until March 28th, 2018, a year and a half after the cooperative agreement was signed. This is after all the work was done. And a question you might ask is, why would a security agreement be required now, after all the work is done? But more importantly, why wasn't the security agreement established before the cooperative agreement was signed by the district manager? Because the cooperative agreement clearly states that the GSWCD must establish a security agreement. The reason this happened, I believe, is because of the pressure Gordon placed on the GSWCD. Employees of the GSWCD are regarded as being very honest and professional. I doubt you'd find other examples of this kind of behavior on the part of the GSWCD. I do believe this is an isolated incident. But, for whatever reason it happened, it amounted to falsifying an application for over $340,000 in public funding by both Gordon Larson and the Grant Soil and Water Conservation District, because Gordon didn't have authorization from the Oregon Water Resources Department, as was required, and the GSWCD didn't have the security agreement established, as was also required. But there's more to the story. The security agreement referred to, which was filed into county records a day after the public records request was acknowledged, wasn't included in the documentation provided in the request fulfillment. The security agreement wasn't in the documentation Jim Sproul received. The security agreement was left out. And why? Because if someone were to see the date on it, they'd realize that it was established long after the cooperative agreement was signed by the GSWCD district manager. So they conveniently left it out. And what's wrong with that? Well, it's a violation of state and federal laws. Publicly funded agencies aren't allowed to decide what information they provide in public records requests. They're required to provide all information pertaining to each individual request. They may be allowed to redact certain bits of information if it threatens the privacy of an individual or organization, but they still must provide all information pertaining to each request. And that didn't happen in this case. So, what you see in this presentation is that Gordon has been involved in a fair amount of scandalous activity. He signed the cooperative agreement for his project without the required permit. He also signed the security agreement a year and a half after he signed the cooperative agreement, knowing full well that it was due before the cooperative agreement was signed. And I ask you now, are these the actions of someone you'd want to be representing you in Grant County Court? I sure hope not. And I'll end by reminding you that the people at the Grant Soil and Water Conservation District have reputations as being honest and professional. I sincerely don't believe that this is their fault or that they should be held accountable. Regardless as to how you feel about GSWCD, you should have more than sufficient evidence that Gordon Larson isn't someone you want representing you as County Commissioner. Thanks for listening, and please consider sharing if you agree.